Hello you dirty potters, how are you today? Welcome to another glaze review. For those of you who are new here or you're not too familiar with my glaze review videos, this is a playlist where I take glazes off the shelf and I test them for you on a myriad of clay bodies with some combos as well. That way you're not surprised when you look on the bottle directly at the test aisle and get nothing that resembles this color whatsoever, which it does happen, trust me, it happens. In today's video, we're going to be reviewing Mossy Mist PCF-75 from the AMACO company. This is from their new line of Potter's Choice glazes. This line is called Potter's Choice Flux. It is for cone 5-6, and I've been very happy with their new line of glazes. I believe they have two new lines of glazes, one of which is Potter's Choice Flux. These essentially just came out, but the other one is called AMACO Cosmos, I think it is, and if we're really lucky, the company will contact us and give us some of those as well. Sorry, I don't know why I rub my hands together like a cartoon bad guy who's gonna tie glaze to a train. I've actually been playing with these Potter's Choice Flux glazes for a little bit off camera, and I am honestly very impressed by them. They make a very nice, melty, smooth color, and when you put them by themselves on clay bodies, they work perfectly good as a normal glaze. You do not have to put these over or under other glazes, even though they are technically designed for that purpose. Just before we get started with this video, there's a few questions that people ask me in my Instagram DMs and sometimes in the comments below of these videos, so I just want to make something clear right now. This name here, the name of flux, often calls back to something in glaze chemistry that we call a flux. Most glazes are made out of, well, 5, but let's say 3 things for now. They're made out of a stabilizer, a glass former, and a flux. The stabilizers and the glass formers don't usually melt underneath the constraints of what our kilns can normally give us, so we need something called a flux to make them melt. So whenever you see a glaze company sell you a bottle of blah 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 flux or hibbity habbity flux, they're talking about something that'll generally make other glazes melt when you either combine them with them or they are relatively melty themselves. The word flux can kind of be seen, for those who don't make their own glazes, as a melty substitute. Now, I've been testing the majority of these glazes by themselves, but I know for a fact that they are usually meant, and I'm not saying you can't use them by themselves because I think they come out fantastic by themselves. I've been testing them on the side, to be honest with you. I have a couple products to show you at a later time, but I know that the company with the name like Flux wants you to put them under and over other glazes. So we're gonna do one more test with a white clay body, porcelain one in fact, and we're gonna put some black over this because I almost guarantee that most of you have some type of bottled version of a black, or if not, make a black yourself. And I have my own standard handmade black that kind of mimics the high majority of blacks that you get from bottles. Okay, so as we usually do, let's talk about what we're putting in the kiln before we put it in. This here is a porcelain white test style with PCF-75 from AMACO on it. This is poured on, as is most of my standard work that you will see on my website at earthnationceramics.com. The high majority of things are poured and dipped. I find that it works better, but we also have a brush one for you at a later time. This is the same thing, poured on, but it is a brown test style. This is a redstone clay body from the AMACO company, a company I recently started working at. So here's our white and our brown clay test styles. Now this over here is for you brushers out there. This one here is a brushed on 4-layer porcelain test style. There's a clear difference to me in between these two because this one was such a pain in the butt to glaze, seeing as it's kind of angled right here. But this one is perfectly round, essentially, so I can very easily tell which one is which, even though they are essentially the same type of bowl and clay body. Here's your brushed on one, here's your poured on one, so remember that for later. This one is Ron Roy's High Gloss Black layered with PCF-75. It's extremely texturized. You can see that I've carved a lot of undulations in it. It should look really nice. I have high hopes for this. And as I said before, the high majority of black glaze that's made in the clay world are kind of all the same. Like, I have the recipe to it. Everyone kind of has their own standard black. So I think this will be a really nice treat for those of you at home who are looking to layer this glaze with something a bit more dark, as this glaze is kind of light. With that being said, let's put them in the kiln. Okay, now that everything's out of the kiln, let's take a look. Let's take a look at our poured on product first. This one is the Dragon Bowl that we poured on first. Now there's two things that I want you to notice here. Number one, this did not drip off of the shelf at all. This stayed on the pot completely, even though I doused it by pouring it onto the product itself. I left very little room, honestly. This is a very stable glaze, even though it is technically categorized as a flux, and many people see fluxes as runny things. So this is a fantastic product. The fact that it stayed really, really well onto the pot. Number two, you see proof of that down here where I hide my maker's mark, or my artist symbol. So if you look right here, you can very clearly see that even though I doused this on my maker's mark, it also did not touch the kiln shelf at all. This is a very smooth bottom. I'm actually pretty happy with this product. I do wish I would have put it on a better bowl though. This is more of an experiment and I'm not happy with it. It's smooth, it stops, and then it's just dragon scale. So I'm not really sure what we're gonna do with this bowl, but we will figure something out. Maybe it'll be for some of the stray cats that keep accumulating on the outside of my house. Next, let's take a look at our brushed on test tile. I'm pretty happy with the fact that this essentially looks exactly the same as the poured on test tile. Usually what happens is my poured on test tile looks far superior to my brushed on one. The only real difference that I can see is that there's a clear difference in between the layering. So with this one right here, I poured it on. All the layers are congruent. They're all exactly the same. But because this one is brushed on, you can very clearly see there's a color differential in between this part right here, which is relatively clear in what we're supposed to get from the glaze itself, and this one here that looks like it only had 3, maybe 2 layers of color on it, and it turned this kind of tan color, if you will, as opposed to the kind of mossy green that we wanted to get from the test tile on the bottle from the flux glaze in the first place. And that difference becomes really evident whenever you do a little close-up right here. You can totally see the difference in between this type of tan right here and this type of mossy green right here, and the difference in layering. Now let's take a look at our brown clay test tile, because this was the most surprising one. This is beautiful, and this is becoming a regular occurrence whenever I use PCF glazes from Amoco on a brown or red clay body. I'm not sure why they're not advertising this, I don't know. I do think there's a type of stereotype in the ceramic art world, people only wanting to use white clay and porcelain, but if I knew I could get these colors out of just the PCF line in general on a brown clay body, I would buy myself a bag of red or brown clay body straight away. This is fantastic, and do keep in mind that the only difference, because this one is poured on too, in between these two is that one is a white clay body and one is a brown clay body. That is the only difference. And you can also very clearly see that this is indeed the glaze we're talking about here, because when it's put on kind of thick enough, let me see if I can find the spot. There it is. If it's put on thick enough, you can very clearly see that it almost ran off of the foot a little bit. So this one's a bit of a rare piece. I love pieces that do this. But you can also very clearly see that it goes from this blue where the iron had effect on it into the original glaze color of this type of mossy thing here. That's the crazy thing about glaze experience and glaze chemistry in general, is that you really get to understand, like, okay, so this is the same thing as this, but the main difference in between these two is that one has a lot of iron in the clay body whilst the other one does not. And this is not only a perfect example, but a very common experience I find with a lot of glazes, is that I will test them on a white clay body and a brown clay body, and the brown clay body often has a difference in color, or at least depth and texture, specifically because of the iron content in the pottery itself, in the pot itself. And this is something, as someone who makes their own glazes, that you get to kind of understand when you see other glazes. So if I'm being full force honest with you, if I had the recipe to this, I would just put a little bit of iron in the recipe, and then it would probably get somewhere close to this anyway. And this is one of the reasons it's so important to test your glazes on white and brown clay bodies. One more time for Around the Bend, huh? Because I like it so much. And the combo glaze, in which we wanted to test black glaze over PCF-75, came out really good as well. This is kind of how the company, I assume anyway, because they put the name Flux in it, intended for you to use the glaze, was both over and under other glazes. And this came out really good. Do keep in mind that this is still a flux glaze, so when you look down here at the bottom of the foot, you can see that this almost went off of the edge right there. And this right here is a little Hail Mary. In fact, for those of you who have more of a keen eye, you'll probably see that I put a glaze line at the bottom of this pot, which is usually just a line in which the glaze has to hurtle over in order to drip onto the shelf. And it also makes the pot look a little bit lifted as well for the profile of the pot. So I think without the glaze line right here, this definitely would have dripped onto my shelf, and I would have had a little more work to do. And I'll be honest with you, I'll be really honest with you from my personal point of view. I'm not really impressed with the white test styles, but that's only because we have these other two test styles to go off of, right? And this is the glaze that they're promising you. I love the consistency. This color does indeed match up with this color, whether it's brushed on or it's poured on, like how I like to do. But seeing them on colors next to something like this, why would I even bother putting this on a white clay body after I get this? And especially seeing them with such combinations, such as this, like why would I even bother using this specific glaze as a solo glaze? I would mix it with some type of darker contrasting color almost all the time. And I'm extremely impressed by the red clay body. I mean, if I was watching this video, I would just use all my red clay on this one glaze, honestly, because this is so gorgeous. Well, thank you, Dirty Potters, for joining me today. If you want to see more videos like this, please comment down below if you like them, and please tell me what kind of glazes you would like me to test on screen. At the moment, we're going through kind of like a Clayscapes and AMACO type beat right now, because they just got their new line out, and I'm really impressed with it, as well as really excited to test it out for the company. But let me know down below if there's any companies. Maybe they contact me. Maybe they give me some glazes. Who knows? You never know. Remember to click all those YouTube buttons. Good luck on your next kiln load, and I will see you, Dirty Potters, next week.
Thank you for your patronage.
Please put it down in the comments below. I want to make it very clear. Put it in the comments below. Do not message me on Instagram.